Guys, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Just before we start the podcast episode, I would just like to tell you all that there is a fundraiser for the Rover on the 28th. So please, if you are interested, we would love for all of you to attend. Please check out therover.ca for more information. And if you don't have a chance to do that, go check out the description below and check out what is going on. We would love to have you. We'd love to see you. And here is the episode. Hello and welcome to the Rover Media's podcast network, The Midnight Choir. We appreciate all your support and we ask you to go check out the work that we do over in the link below. therover.ca/support-us or therover.ca/newsletter. You can check out all the writing that we're doing over there and all the extreme deep dive reporting that we are giving. Investigative journalism at its finest. Everywhere you look, people are claiming that Montreal's music scene and nightlife are diminishing. Is it true? As someone who's been involved with the nightlife in Montreal for years, playing shows all over the city and working in bars here and there, I have trouble seeing whether or not music in Montreal is less active or not. But with the $150 million cuts from the Quebec government's art budget, I need to know if the scene is flourishing or if it's waning. So I called up Sergio, the owner of Turbo Hau in Montreal, and we discussed how the scene was, and whether or not there is a future for artists in this city.
Basically, I'm the co-owner of Turbo Hau, a small venue in Montreal, and I come from, get out of here. I've played in bands for most of my adult life. I've toured most of my adult life. And then when that came to an end, I just started doing the venue stuff.
Sergio, I would love to talk about the current state of the nightlife and the music scene in Montreal, because we are one of the most famous cities in the world for indie music, for live music, and for that kind of stuff. And so I would love to hear your thoughts on the current state of the Montreal music scene.
I mean, it's healthy, it's thriving. There's tons of great bands that are coming out. I hate to name any of them specifically because I feel like I always forget a bunch of others. But that's basically what's going on. It's very healthy in terms of the people making art, in terms of people making music. It's some of the best that I've seen in a very long time. But ultimately, just like everywhere else in the world, just like everything else in the world, everything is affected by, the cost of living and how difficult it is to rent an apartment and things like this. I remember when I was playing music and I was still touring and I was doing whatever, the cost of rent was basically a nickel and a jig. That's all you had to do. You lived with 4 people and you can be on tour forever. You guys could split one bar shift and pay your rent. But outside of that, it's healthy and it's, in terms of in terms of the people making the music, it's healthy and it's fantastic.
How is it comparing to what it used to be some years ago?
There are some pretty big changes for the better that I've seen. For the most part, punk and hardcore and metal used to be an absolute white boys club. In all assets. You wouldn't be able to, we would go on tour for we would do 40 shows in 39 days. And if there was more than 3 women playing in a show, we'd be like, what the fuck? Where do all these women come from? But now,
that's amazing.
Now it's the opposite. You are kind of in the minority. It's weird when I see a show and there's no people of color. There's no, women participating. It's better that way. And, not just because, representation's a big, huge thing, but also being able to grab different perspectives from all over the place to sort of enrich what you've got going on in these scenes helps. It's adding nutrients to the soil. It helps things to grow, bringing in, new perspectives and new people and all this stuff to really help, keep the scene alive and flourishing.
What kind of genres of music are lately at your place that you're seeing the most? Because I know you do a lot of hardcore, a lot of punk. What other stuff is going on right now?
What we're actually known best for, which is weird because you tell people outside of the punk and hardcore community, they know us mostly as an experimental hip hop and jazz venue from the Grove Wednesdays, which are extremely popular. So if you ask anybody, any younger person going to university who's into jazz or hip hop or R&B, they're Turbo Hau. So it's yeah, Grove, fucking hip hop, jazz, R&B. That's what they know us for.
But those are genres that are really pushing forward ideals of the future and progressive and like pushing the like musical and artistic fields forward.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
think.
And the people who are involved are so they have such a love for music. It's just like the craftsmanship, everything about it is what they live for. They only want to play. That's all they ever want to do. Like, I love
Yeah.
punk. I love hardcore. I like all these genres of music. I think it's
Yeah.
great. But I feel, I mean, this is like an incredibly generalized statement, but like, there's a lot of posturing. There's a lot of like, who knows who, and like, what kind of pants are you wearing? Are you wearing the right band shirt? Like, do you know the right other bands? Are you playing with the right other bands? Whereas like you have these jams where it doesn't matter. You just want to get up with these people and play. You just want to, be able to be part of this sort of creative process. And not to say that doesn't exist, but since I'm so exposed to punk and hardcore all the time, you get to see these things.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it exists on the other side as well, but I'm just not as exposed to it.
How have you found the pandemic's legacy has touched you? How has the pandemic changed the music scene?
It just like everything else, like the soaring costs of everything had made everything more difficult for touring artists, especially. So like what you'll see is one of the first things that we did was to get a proper backline so that everybody would be able to use it, so they could save money on gas, wouldn't have to lug their stuff around, because nobody has like an Econoline anymore. You know what I mean? Nobody's driving around their 15 passenger, $300 to go 2 blocks kind of thing. Like, I keep saying it, but like I sound like a nostalgic old man, but like, 10, 15 years ago, all your stuff went in the van. It doesn't matter what show you were playing, you were using all your own gear. Like, that was a big thing. And now it's just not, these things aren't as feasible anymore, and people don't really like care as much. They don't need to bring like 2 fridges and like their own drum kit. They're like, we're here to play some gigs and have a good time. We want to be able to make it as feasible as possible, and we try to sort of accommodate that. But that's been like a big thing. It's also been, there was that brief period when everything was allowed to open up again, where I describe it as like France in 1945, right? Like they threw out the Nazis, everybody's screaming and fucking in the streets, having the best time of their lives. And like, that's what it was in, from March till about September, where shows were rammed. You couldn't do anything without like a bunch of people showing up. Everything, it felt like a golden age of like DIY music in small sort of spaces.
That's incredible.
That has kind of gone by the wayside at this point. People are sort of like getting back into their routines. They're sort of like, oh, I don't want to go out anymore. I mean, 1, they don't have any money, but 2, it's sort of like, I'm just going to stay home. I'm going to watch The Office again, and I'm going to just rot on my bed. And it's like, if that's what you want to do, that's fine. But there's, all these people are still doing this stuff. It's still all available to you.
So have you found attendance is declining, or how has attendance been?
I mean, it's been steady since then, luckily for us.
Good.
But, there's, gone are the days of like 4 sold out shows in a week. You know what I mean?
There's been a lot of talk about Montreal's declining nightlife scene. How would you respond to people saying that?
I mean, I don't see it. I feel like it's a lot of fear mongering. There's a lot of people saying stuff like, oh, Gen Z doesn't go out anymore. These kids don't like to drink. These kids don't like to party. In my day, I would get drunk every 2 seconds. It's like, it's crazy. You're fucking crazy. The kids are doing exactly what you were doing, except you don't know what they're doing it. You don't know where they're doing it because they don't tell you, because you're old. So they're playing shows under bridges. They're playing shows in warehouses. They're playing shows in people's apartments. They're having parties. They're having fun. All this stuff exists. You just don't know about it. And since you don't know about it, you think everything's in decline. So, like, it's the same old story. It's the same song and dance. Like,
okay.
I think it's, from what I've seen, it's healthy and good. And, also, for the most part, like, the best bands in the city are all friends. They're all doing stuff together. So, like, this idea that, like, oh, everything's in decline and everything's bad, I was like, that's not true. I see it every day. I'm a part of it every day. Like, everybody's kind of getting together to make this stuff work. And if you just want to be like sour about it and sit on the fucking sidelines and just complain about it, then good, stay there, because there's a lot of people who are motivated and want these things to continue the way they are.
How is it running your bar and dealing with government red tape? Is the government supportive of what you're doing, or do they push back a little bit? Do you have to work around some challenging rules?
I mean, the golden rule is beg for forgiveness, don't ask for permission. Like, you just do
Yeah.
the things that you think that are best for you, that you feel are like safe and morally right. Like, there's a difference between like a rule and doing something wrong. You know what I mean? Like, if I break a rule that I don't have any sort of like moral objection to, like, I don't give a shit, so I'm just going to do it anyway. But, you know,
Yeah.
the government sometimes will, you know, they'll get involved in like the weirdest ways with like noise complaints, because it's like they're talking out of both sides of their mouths, right? So like the Quartier spectacle, especially where we are, the zoning of that particular block is one thing in particular sticks out, where there's no proximity clauses, right? So a lot of places in the city, you can only have bars within so many meters of each other. On Saint Denis, that doesn't exist. Every single storefront can be a bar, can have a liquor license, which is essentially telling everybody,
Okay.
this is where we want you to put nightlife. This is where we want you to put bars. This is where we want people to go. Try to herd them into this space. And it's one thing to say that and make rules so that can happen. And then at the other, at the other side of their mouth, they're like, but don't be too loud. There are people living here. You have to respect everybody who's here. And I'm like, that's crazy. You can't
Right.
jam everybody and everything into this area and then be, upset that we're doing the things that you've told us we're allowed to do. Not only told us, we're encouraged us to be here. Like, part of the reason why I went to Saint Denis for this exact reason. Like, there is the idea, we're in the Quartier spectacle. Like, this is where this is supposed to happen. And in St. Henry, we would used to get in trouble for noise all the time. Like, I had one neighbor come and get mad at me because there were punks fucking in her backyard. And I'm like, that's not my problem. In fact, like, hose them down. I don't know what you want me to tell you, but like, that's not my problem. But at a certain point, it does become your problem, because you've entered the neighborhood. You've sort of put your element there, and it doesn't vibe with everything else that's going on. So, you have to leave, just like anything else. If you're a guy buying a condo in the Quartier spectacle and then you're sad about it, it's like, dude, your element doesn't vibe with the rest of it. You're not part of the ecosystem. You should just leave, I guess.
Was it you a couple of years ago who had the problem with you needed to fix a wall and the government was like, you can't touch that wall? Was that you?
I mean, that happens all the time.
Can you tell me that story?
It's like, yeah, it's all kinds of stuff. Like, especially in where we are, because they're historical buildings. So like, you can't do anything. Everything has to be exactly the way it is. So like, we had you used to have like an awning in the front, like sort of like a vestibule, but it was rotted out, disgusting. It was leaking the entire time. It reeked. It smelled bad. It was like, we have to get rid of this thing. And I went to the city and they were like, no, you can't tear that down. It's part of the old architecture. It's like, no, somebody threw this up in the 80s. It's fucking disgusting. It needs to come down. And like, it took a bunch of back and forth before I was just like, you know what? I'm going to tear it down. And when it does come down, I'm going to tell them it fell. Like, that's what happened.
That's amazing.
And like, what happened? Oh,
That's
it fell down.
amazing.
It fell down. I don't know what to tell you. It fell down.
How is the finances at Turbo House? Do you still make a good living? Is it easy to keep going, or is it challenging?
No, if this was about like purely being a business and, selling alcohol and making money, I would have left doing this fucking years ago. Like, this is more of a way to connect with the community that I'm in, connect with people, like, be able to share the resources that I've been able to gather. Like, if this was purely about having a job and money, like, absolutely not. It's not sustainable. But at the same time, I live a comfortable life. Like, I don't need or want for many things. I am on the road to becoming a thousandaire, and I'm pretty excited about that.
Great
Woo!
job.
There. Could you
You're more
imagine?
successful than almost every
Could you
punk.
imagine having $1,000 in your bank account? Couldn't be me. But but ultimately it's good. Like, we're able to provide the things that we want for our staff. We're able to provide the things that I need for myself. And that's really kind of like all I'm really in it for. I want to be able to be a part of a community. I want to be able to help other people to also be a part of this community. Like the idea of like, I have to, just squeeze and extract every penny from everybody to sort of make this work is, I don't know. At this point, I've kind of let that go, and I'm just happy to be where we are.
That's amazing. What are the biggest challenges in running your venue?
Literally money. Money is the biggest issue. Like
Literally money.
It's a tool, right? And you have to be able to use it properly, and you have to. But up until the pandemic, everything was smooth sailing. It was great. We were having a great time. But then it's hard to pivot after not being allowed to operate for 3 years. Your entire business model is illegal for 3 years. And then you try to, pivot from that and make it work, all while constantly taking on more debt to be able to stay open. And by the time you open and everything seems to go back to normal, you can kind of work your way through. We still have about a year's worth of debt to pay back. And this is like, not an inconsequential amount. Like up until a month and a half ago, we were paying back $14,000 a month in debt. That is on top of our rent. And we're just like, we got to get it back. We've got to, like, you're working basically to provide other people with money while still doing all the other things that we're doing, like providing housing, providing food, providing like a backline, making sure that gear works the way it is, providing health insurance for our employees, providing wages that are above minimum wage for the employees. Like everything still has to operate within the ethos that I have. But at the same time, like you've got to make all this work within the financial, confinement that you have, like having to pay back all this debt.
In Vancouver, where I'm from, basically the rising cost of living has more or less killed a lot of the scene. It's coming back, and punks are like cockroaches. You can't truly kill them. But it's really hurt the music scene that it's so expensive to live there. Do you see something like that happening here?
Not quite yet, but you can see like the beginnings of that, right? Especially once again, if you compare it to like that magical time in Montreal of the, late aughts to early 2010s, where it was perfect. Everybody seemed to have money in their pocket. Everybody was in like some weird noise band with the name Wolf in it somewhere. And it was just amazing. And that comes from having like reasonably priced cost of living. Like if your rent can be split 3 ways with guys in your bands and you're paying like $100 each or God knows what it was, and you're living in Hochelaga or the bowels of St. Henry, like that was a feasible way to live. And the most important thing, though, is not so much that it costs so much money, it costs so much of your energy and time. If you are not focused on being able to hone your craft, write new songs, try to make connections with the people that you're in a band with, and you're spending all your time working, a job, 2 jobs, 3 jobs to make ends meet, your mental capacity to be able to perform and write and connect with music is almost severed. You know what I mean? And it has to be so beyond, like, obviously money's going to be the issue, but like it's your time, man. Your time and your energy is getting sucked in by all this stuff. And that is more than anything is what's going to make things worse.
How is social media affecting your venue, and how do the artists feel about it who play in your venue?
Social media is a fun distraction. It's certainly a good way to like get people to know about what's going on. But ultimately, there's no better especially in a small room like ours, right? We're not trying to fill the Bell Center. We're trying to get 80 people into a room. So like the most important thing is sort of like word of mouth, just speaking to your friends, getting involved in a scene that everybody can sort of like come and support each other. But and I find that social media like has sort of like, it makes you think that you're doing these things without doing these things. Like, oh, I posted a story 20 minutes before my set telling my friends to come out. Like, that's not telling your friends that you're playing. You know what I mean? So in some
Yeah.
ways it's certainly helpful, but in other ways it kind of tricks you into thinking you're doing the work that you're not.
How do you think venues like you play a role in shaping the local music scene?
More than anything, like, music is going to exist with or without venues. There, people are going to find these places to play, and they're going to be able to perform and have their friends gather, you know, in any sort of capacity. The place that we come in is just trying to make that easier. I think it's never really about the venue. It should always be about the people who are making music. Like, music's going to exist without venues. It's going to be fine. But so my goal and our role, I think, is once again, like, we've been lucky enough to gather these resources, and my biggest role, I think, is to be able to share them and allow people to sort of like take part in what we have so that everybody can, go forward a little bit easier.
What did you do to survive COVID during 3 years of
We
being
sold
shut down?
so many fucking t-shirts. Holy shit. We sold so many fucking t-shirts.
You turned into a merch. You turned into a merch brand.
At a certain point, we were selling like 10 grand of merch a month.
Oh my God.
So that was like taking care of our absolute most basic bills. But certainly it wasn't enough. But like, that was what made it so that when we came back, we weren't completely destitute.
Okay, were you already on Saint Denis by the time the pandemic rolled around? Do you think the city of Montreal is doing a good job supporting the local artistry, or no?
I mean, there are certain people within the city of Montreal who are doing a fantastic job. Absolutely. But in terms of the city as a whole, no. You know what I mean? Like, and I don't want to throw everybody under the bus, because I know there are a lot of people who are working very hard to make this stuff work and to make it viable. They're just not being listened to, and and there's only so much you can do when nobody's going to listen to the ideas you have. And like, there's a lot of like ideas being floated around, like the idea of like a 24-hour bars and stuff like that, which is wonderful, which is great. There are a lot of people who've been doing that. There are a lot of people who've been asking for that, and there's a lot of people who can be trusted to make that work. But ultimately, those kinds of policies have to be paired with other policies to make it work. It's like being a superhero with the ability to jump super, super high, but you don't have like steel legs. So when you come down, you're going to come down in a splat. You know what I mean?
Oh no.
So like, it's good to have 24-hour bars, but if you don't have like 24-hour public transport, if you don't have better security, if you don't have all kinds of things to support that sort of policy, then it's just going to fall flat in its face, and all these people who've been trying to do it will be left holding the bag, and the city being like, see, we told you couldn't do it. It was like, you didn't fucking help us. You just gave us this thing without the support that it needs to hold itself up.
Right. You haven't given us the proper logistics to actually make this successful. Exactly. Right. The recent Quebec provincial funding cuts were around three quarters of their annual budget. It used to be around $200 million that they gave out in grants to artists, not just musicians, just to be clear, but artists in general. And they've cut it to less than $50 million per year. How do you think that is going to affect the music scene, and how will that affect venues?
It's absolutely fucked. It's absolutely fucked. The government of Quebec is a clusterfuck of fucking clowns and degenerates and like real estate agents pretending to be politicians who give a shit about you. They're all fucking scum. They're the scum of the earth. Municipal politics, the worst. The only thing worse than that, I guess, would be provincial politics. Awful. Fucking awful.
Right.
Especially when you have a government that plays lip service to promoting Quebec culture and Quebec arts, but then does these fucking insane things like make it impossible to get English service in a hospital, while at the same time slashing the funds for arts and culture in Quebec. Like, you don't want to do any of that. You're playing like I like to call it fucking hobby politics. Like, none of this shit fucking is important, what you're trying to do. Like, you're being shitty. You might as well be talking to me about your AC/DC cover band. It doesn't matter. You're full of shit. I don't give a fuck. Like, tell me about the real shit that you're going to do to inject culture and like make people give a shit about the culture that we're in. And you show me every time you slash these funds that you actually don't fucking care. You don't give a shit. You just want somebody to vote for you over some like divisive bullshit nothingness. Like, scum. I cannot even describe in words how much I despise these people and the way that they try to get people to vote for them with these like bullshit, divisive, like split people into these different factions so that like you can vote for me. You're gonna hate some fucking immigrant you've never met in your life. You're gonna hate some fucking, person from northern Quebec who you've never met in your life because of this weird bullshit that these people are telling you about that they don't even believe in. Not for a fucking second. Not for a second do they believe in this shit.
It's cynical. It's
cynical. Dog shit. You're all fucking scum because like you said, if you cared about arts and culture in fucking Quebec and you wanted to promote it and make it work, you wouldn't be slashing these funds to the people who are making arts and culture in Quebec and showing people how wonderful it could be. You're full of shit. I hope nothing but bad things happen to you for the rest of your life. You deserve it. Fucking rotten hell. Eat shit and live. Fuck you.
When we boot them out of the government, what can the next government do in order to correct these problems?
I mean, the biggest thing is returning funds to where they need to be. Like, supporting these artists. Like, if you want people to give a shit about Quebec arts and culture, show everybody that you give a shit about Quebec arts and culture. It starts from the top. Yeah. You have to lead from the front. This is important. We want people to know about this. We want people to be proud of the stuff that we can make here. So then fund it. Pay for it. Show it. Like, say it with your whole fucking chest. Like, there's that. And everything trickles down from like the cost of living, right? So like, what are you doing to make sure people can afford to live where they're living? What are you doing to make sure that people can actually make art, can actually participate in the culture that you're so proud of? Like, if you're just saying like, oh, it's great that everybody should speak French, but at the same time, like, you don't have time to take part because you're working 3 fucking jobs to pay you pay your mortgage, pay your rent, pay whatever. Like, groceries are $300 fucking dollars. You think anybody's going to give a shit about anything else but paying their fucking bills? Like, get the fuck out of here. Like, it can't stay like this. And if people aren't going to be serious about what the root causes of all this stuff is and talk about this hobby bullshit, like, then, don't get into politics. Like, just stay the real estate agent that you are, you fucking goddamn parasite. Spotify's weird because, like, why do people put their music on Spotify? Just don't fucking put it on there.
Yeah, they shouldn't.
Just don't fucking do it. Like,
they shouldn't at this point. It's, yeah.
It's crazy.
I mean, Spotify cut their payments down to 1/10 of a cent now. 1/10 of a cent.
Don't put it on there. Like, they don't have a service if you don't provide them with the music.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's very messed up.
And I'm sure like a lot of this has to do with the labels that own all this music. If you sell your rights to your music to a label, they're going to put it on there and they get, it becomes attractive to them because they have so much music to put out. They're getting a cut of all these streams. So like once you get down to like, and like it's the labels who are part owners of Spotify, it's like a disgusting mess.
How do you think artists are supposed to make a living if you're not even going to pay them? Like, artists can't even sell a CD anymore online because people are like, well, it's free. It's supposed to be free.
Yeah, music doesn't cost anything. There's no idea. Like, a friend of mine once told me we were doing a, I guess like a pop-up, sort of like a, what are they called? Kind of like a garage sale. Anyway, he had done all this work to put it together. He was dealing at the bar, and he charged $1 to get in. He charged $1 to get in. And I was like, why the fuck are you just charging the $1? He's like, because I did something, and people have to know that I did this something for them. And it doesn't hurt their wallet, and it doesn't change really anything in their lives, but they know somebody did something, and you have to like show that appreciation. Same thing with music. Like
Yeah.
I did this. You're here to watch this. Like you have to, like it's a give and take. It doesn't just exist out of thin air. Like I put time, I put effort, and the least you can do is to show sort of like appreciation and support through like making sure that I can continue to doing it by paying for the show, buying a shirt, doing all this stuff.
Yeah.
Because there's no money in CDs anymore. There's no money in the physical music. Like it doesn't exist.
I would like to know, so back in the 90s, especially early 2000s, 2010s, I would say is when it kind of started ending. Quebec had such a distinct culture worldwide. Okay, you came to Quebec, it was so distinct. The music was out there, the TV was really specifically Quebec. Okay, like I remember growing up watching some of this Quebecois TV, and it was wild, man. Like the stuff people would do, such a dry, sarcastic, in-your-face sense of humor, like an anti-government sentiment everywhere, anti-authoritarian. But with the advent of social media and the internet, do you feel that that Quebec culture, that distinctness, is fading away to become a monoculture?
Yeah, I mean, you have to watch out for it too. Like, that's really funny that you bring that up because, like, my my girlfriend for a long time, my ex-girlfriend now, we used to call it, because she's from Ottawa, and she used to, when she would see something in that came from Quebec, and she wouldn't know it was from Quebec right off the bat, but there was something a little bit off about it. She's like, that has that Q factor. Like, this has Q factor all over. So, like, anytime she would see something that was like a bit weird, kind of like everything else, but it was off, she's like, no, Q factor. There's Q factor out the fucking window with this. But yeah, like once everybody starts to consume all the same music and whatever, and like they make it so easy, then yeah, absolutely, you become sort of this monoculture like throughout North America. But you know, I feel like there are people who are trying to fight against that. They're trying to once again promote these things. The weirdness that comes from, once again, it all comes from the same fucking place. Having the time and energy to be able to do these things, the results are fucking fantastic. They're wild. You can do all kinds of crazy shit if you have the time and the mental energy to do it. And that starts to go away once again. There's one thing to say about monocultures, but another thing to say about just, once again, the cost of living. If you don't have the time and the energy to put into this art, then you're not going to have the fun stuff. You're not going to have all the weird shit that came out. You're not going to have like fucking les marmottes aplaties. You're not going to have fucking les cowboys fringants. You're not going to have any of that stuff. Like, it doesn't exist without the time, energy, and the help from the government sector to be able to make these things work.
Yeah. Even in TV and stuff like that, there used to be something real fucking weird that's distinct. And I don't know if I see that anymore.
The Q factor, baby.
The Q factor doesn't exist like it used to. And it does. Because when I meet and talk to Queb artists, I'm like, you're fucking wild. And people are experimental and pushing the boundaries of what's possible in Quebec. But then they can't find an audience as easily because there's no money in it. And then trying to push it, and then you try and get it on Spotify, but Spotify's trying to fuck you in the ass and like non-consensually too. And you're just, it's so hard for these extremely brilliant artists to do something truly exposed to the world, you know? So what do you think is the future of Montreal's nightlife and music scene?
I mean, it's going to...
Or do you think there's any emerging trends?
I mean, it's going to continue the way that it's, like, it's always evolving. It's always doing... Like, the trend is that there is always a new trend. Like, there's always, like, something new and fun that's happening. Like, right now, just, like... Once again, if you are into punk, hardcore, and metal, and you live in the city of Montreal, for you right now, this is like a fucking golden age. Like, there's so much cool shit. Once again, I'm hesitant to even name a single band because of how many that I would leave out, but it's just wild. It's wild. Go to a show like any night of the week and you're going to see more cool, fun stuff. There's, and it's not just that, like the hip hop and R&B fucking scene is absolutely flourishing. There's so much to do. You just need to like get involved, go to a gig, like, and you'll see where it's gonna go. Like, you could be part of it right now. It's history, baby. You could fucking go, fucking take some pictures, start a zine, like, make note of what's going on right now, because it's gonna be in 10, 15 years. You're gonna look back and you're like, fuck, that was a good time.
What advice would you give to somebody who's aspiring to be an artist or a venue owner here in Montreal?
Venue owner, don't fucking do it. don't do it. Unless you want to be fucking poor and miserable. Poor
for the rest of your life.
Just like, don't fucking do it. Artists do it all the time. Just keep doing it. Just never stop doing it. Like, there's always going to be a place, and you have to, just the way things work, you kind of have to make your own ideas of what success looks like. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable all the time, chasing like what this band got on this tour, this band got on this label, this band got to be on this podcast. Why not me? Why not me? Why kind of stuff. What's good for them is good for you, and you have to sort of like change how it is that you want to see yourself as a successful part of the scene that you're in. Just like go to these gigs, make friends, play shows, fucking have fun. Like, this is not like when I was playing shows, like what I thought was successful was being on tour. As long as I was on tour, we were a success. Like, we would tour Europe like constantly. We would go, across North America. We put out records. We didn't sell a bajillion records. We didn't make a lot of money, but like, we were always doing it. So if you're still doing it, you're still in the band, you all still get along, people are coming to the shows, you are a successful musician. Like, you have to see it in those. I had to see it in those terms, but you have to decide for yourself what that's going to look like for you, and adjust those expectations. Yeah. It's not about just making money or going on tour with Metallica and all this stuff. Obviously, these things are important, like they're tools, but like, it's also like the best place that you're ever going to experience music is in a small room with all your fucking friends, and like, there's nothing you could ever fucking tell me to change that idea. Like, you can be on stage with, that footage that always comes around of Metallica, like playing in front of 1 million people in Moscow or whatever the fuck it was. I was like, that's fine. But like, have you ever played a kitchen in Ottawa with like 20 of your best friends? Cause that shit fucking rips.
Listen, Sergio, that's all of my questions. Is there anything else you would like to say before we close out?
No, I mean, the main thing is like I said, just get involved, go out, be involved. Like, you may think that there's some gatekeepy people out there who are like, make it seem too cool. It doesn't give a shit. Those people don't fucking matter. It doesn't matter. Go to shows, get involved, meet some people, start a band. Like, fucking Trackside just closed down. Fucking turn your basement into a goddamn venue. Who gives a shit?
I think that people are less right about the scene in Montreal diminishing than I thought. Nonetheless, I hope to see it continue to flourish and for new blood to populate the underground constantly. I love the city and the nightlife, and I want nothing more than Quebec culture to continue growing and influencing people globally. Thank you so much for listening. Like and subscribe below, and please check out the Rover's website at therover.ca/support-us or rover.ca/newsletter. We have so much investigative reporting coming out, and I think you'll love it. Deep dives into a wide variety of subjects that will blow your mind. Thank you so much, and I will see you next week.